Hello and welcome to Thursday Night Talks. This is a show where we discuss the week in Humboldt, the local issues, and the local personalities with the local personalities. I'm Talvi Freed. I'll be your local host for the next hour. Tonight, we're here to toot our own horn. Access Humboldt, who is the license holder of this radio station, KZZH 96.7, LPFM, is about to start a new chapter in its history. Access experienced a seismic shift in 2022 when it vacated Eureka High School for the College of the Redwoods campus, which many are not aware of, though yes, we're at College of the Redwoods campus. Now with the retirement of longtime executive director Sean McLaughlin, a new director and quite possibly a new era is set to begin in October. Joining to discuss the future and maybe some of the past of Access Humboldt are members of Access Humboldt's Board of Directors, Board President Molly Cage, and Board members Jane Callahan, Jay Tillman. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you. Good to be here, Talvi.
Yes,
Thanks, Talvi.
I'm glad you're all here. Let's start off with a lot of people listening to this radio station aren't even aware what Access Humboldt is, or a lot of people watching on Access Humboldt are just like, oh, it's that station that I randomly tune into, and sometimes I see my neighbors on it. It's kind of cool. Though, would anyone like to give a little bit of a rundown of what Access Humboldt actually is?
Yeah, well, we haven't actually talked about who does what here. So you're watch that negotiation in live time, or at least sound. What do you say, Jane? You want me to jump in? Jay, you want me to jump in?
Please do, Molly.
Okay, this is falls to the chair of board. At least to give it a stab. So, Access Humboldt is one of the stations, or one of the organizations of several stations now, that was founded all around the United States in the 1970s. And as the world of cable television was blooming at that time, and U.S. Congress, through the Federal Communications Commission, put together an expectation that money should be spent that goes to those cable companies, at least a small portion of it, a small percentage, should go to local organizations that are committed to producing what they call PEG, public, educational, and governmental access programming for that local area. The word I like that in there that's the most important is the word local. A lot of the news you get or information is filtered through national organizations. This is local, meant to stay that way. And so that is still functioning. There are, of course, debates about how it should be funded now in the world of the internet and so forth. But that's how it was established, and that's basically what we do. Is that short and sweet enough?
That's gorgeous. Did anyone want to add in anything else?
I can add that we are a community media organization. We are a private nonprofit organization. We've been around since, I think, 1972. We exist to make sure that the community and community members have access to putting together their own broadcasts and programming, in addition to having cable TV channels, which cable subscribers are probably familiar with. We also operate a wonderful community radio station called KZZH, which we're on right now, which I just love. It's true community radio. It's based in Eureka. Even though it's low power, it seems to encompass most of Humboldt County. And all of our programming is available online through streaming. And that's just the beginning of all the really cool things Access Humboldt does.
I think it's very interesting that the media center wasn't really mentioned in that, because when you ask, if you asked one of my former coworkers, I used to work with Access Humboldt, it was always, if the question ever came up, it was the media center. So does anyone want to describe what the media center is and what that provides to the community? Because I do feel, I know all the answers to this, but let's pretend I don't. Pretend I'm someone who just walked into this myself. What is the community media center, and what does it offer?
I guess I
I
can
think
talk on that. Or yeah, oh,
Jay
yeah,
has a great story to tell about this.
sure. Yeah, so the Community Access Center is right. It's where the community can access media production tools. So you're talking camera, software, studio space, those kind of things. Um, it's for me, I'm very much a tech guy. I like getting my hands on all the tools and stuff like that. So Access Humboldt has some great resources for producing media. Like whether you want to make a radio show or a podcast or do some live broadcast stuff, then it's a great place to do it. It's changed a lot since I was in high school at Eureka High. I used to frequent the Access Humboldt station when it was there. That's where I first started learning about a lot of this stuff. So I've been around Access Humboldt for close to, gosh, 13 years, I think now. So first as a student and now as a board member and once an employee as well. So lots of cool stuff going on.
It does seem like everybody in the local media scene who's been here a minute has had their foot inside Access Humboldt at some point or another, even if it was just to borrow equipment briefly. It's kind of one of those secrets that aren't such a secret, but I still meet people that go, "Oh, what is this? What can I do? Can I get a tour of that? That sounds great." And the answer is always yes. Yes, you can. If anybody does have questions that are listening right now while we're going live, feel free to text 707-498-4146. Again, that's 707-498-4146. Whether it be about Access Humboldt or direct questions to any of our panelists or just any curiosities. So that's a little bit about what Access Humboldt is, a little bit of what it provides, which is a huge contribution to Humboldt County that somehow a lot of people still don't know about, and I'm not sure why. It's like, here's this free opportunity for people of all ages to really get in there. So glad we can have this show. Though there are a lot of changes happening at Access Humboldt. The move was a big one, which I think that things are kind of settled, at least building wise, for the next couple years. Not sure if anybody wants to discuss just the move and what that means from Eureka High School to College of the Redwoods.
Perhaps it reflects what you were saying before about our visibility and the confusion people have about what we do. What we've already talked about here is a piece of that. I mean, I mentioned the three different areas in which Access Humboldt is meant to operate: the public sphere, the educational sphere, and government access. People see those as very different things, where they might know about those cable channels where they can watch local city council meetings and so forth. And that's the governmental piece. They might not know about the media center, which Jay so passionately talked about, which is where you can learn as a member of the public how to make your own output. And then the educational piece can be in both of those other spheres too, where you're learning about your local government. That's educational. And you're learning from other people making podcasts or whatever, because they're all members of the public who are doing these things. But all that's to say that this is reflected too in our change of location, where people may never know where we are. So rather than being more mysterious, we thought we'd get on the air once in a while and help people figure it out. So thanks for doing this, Talvi.
Yeah, of course. It's fair. Anybody else want to comment on the change of locations?
I want to thank College of the Redwoods and Keith Flamer, the president, for offering us a wonderful home. Our community media center is located in the old administrative building at College of the Redwoods, and it is just a huge, wonderful facility with a TV studio, podcasting, training rooms. It's really a really great partnership with College of the Redwoods, and it's allowed us to work more closely with students and faculty, and gives us the opportunity to really stay connected to the world of young people and young people who are pursuing educational opportunities We have some marvelous interns that we are so grateful for, which is through the College Corps program. And they just bring vibrancy and life to our organization that really contributes a lot to making us relevant for our times.
Cool. So the changes that have been happening, Access Humboldt is a board, or there is a board for Access Humboldt. Not everybody, it turns out, understands what a board is. So does somebody want to give a little bit of information about the board structure versus, you know, is Access Humboldt a nonprofit? What is what's the hierarchy of everything going on there?
I'll jump in here. It is a nonprofit organization, and its laws are what are called bylaws. As with most nonprofits, there's a set of bylaws that determine how we will act in any different circumstance. And the bylaws delineate a really interesting board. I've served on a number of nonprofit boards, and this is the most unusual one I've ever served on because it has 3 different sets of peoples meant to create a board that it embraces as wide a diversity of the actual different communities that are within Humboldt County as possible. And of course, we're constantly trying to improve on how we actually make that come to life. But there are elected positions and there are appointed positions that the people on the board themselves can appoint. And then my favorite piece, probably because I'm one of them, the designated positions of different people serving different parts of the community. There's the cities collectively choose a person to be the city person on the board. Right now, that's Pam Powell, who works in Eureka. There's the League of Women Voters, and who has a designated spot because of our focus on civic engagement. And I am currently the designee from the League. There's several other positions that are representing local levels of education from K through 12 through the 2 post graduate, if you will, the post 12th grade thing. So that's College of the Redwoods, of course, and Cal Poly. Each of those designated spots has a person serving on the board. So, and then organizations too, more broadly than that. The idea to bring in folks who represent different parts of the board. Right now, we're blessed to have Brenda Perez, who's from Centro del Pueblo, and Patty Hecht, who's from HAPI, the Humboldt Asians and Pacific Islanders in Solidarity. Those are both members of the board, and they get to inform the board from their understanding of what's needed by their communities to be more visible, and also bring that wealth of what Access Humboldt can help their people create for their letting people know in the more general world of the county what's going on. So it's a very unusually designed board that's meant to be keeping us aware of the fact that we are not just a typical board, but we do a lot of the typical things, which is we are meant to inform the actions of the executive director. And so the board of directors is meant to literally direct the organization, both economically and what it chooses to do in terms of communications and its activities and its fundraising, which is something that Jay knows a whole lot about, for example, and grant writing and so forth. And then in production side, Jay knows a tremendous amount about that. So you've got a good threesome here to understand different facets of what we do. But the board itself, and we're all members of the board itself has this breadth that I've never seen on other boards. And I think it's one of the marvels of Access Humboldt, actually.
On that note, I did see that there were 2 positions open, or you're accepting applications, something like that. I got an email that said something about that.
That closed
Okay.
already. There were 2 elected positions open. There are 6 elected positions, and 2 of them come up each year. So you've got this rotation, as many boards do. You don't want everybody having to get elected all at once. You want to have something of ongoing solidarity and continuity. That's the word I wanted. So 2 of them were, and that was delineated at the board development meeting that happened a couple of weeks ago and then ratified at the last board meeting, which happened a couple of weeks ago. That's getting us ready for the next big meetings of the board, which happen at the annual meeting, and that's the very end of October. So we do have, in fact, 2 appointed positions that are currently open, but we're going to leave those open for a while, the board decided, because as you've been alluding to, we have a brand new executive director coming in at the end of October, and we want to make sure we haven't sort of dotted every I and crossed every T until she gets around to say how she wants some of that stuff done.
Yes, which that is going to be my next question, is deeper into the organization are employees. There are people that do run on a day-to-day basis that one in particular answers to the board, and that's the executive director. And then those under them answer to the executive director, which how has that transition been from one? This might be helpful to those who are going through this. I know of several boards in the area that it can feel like a big upheaval sometimes with the change of everything. So it could be good for them to know what a I would actually of all the boards that I've experienced, consider Access Humboldt to be one of the more stable ones. So it might be good to get some insight into. I love the faces that were just made, but oddly enough, it's it's always a change when somebody who's been long term in the company for a decade or longer or much longer leaves. So what has Access Humboldt been going through? Because there's the changes of the move, now the changes of the executive director. So just the leaving aspect, what were the fears happening or hopes?
I can take a
Go, Jane.
I'll try to talk about that a little bit. Nonprofit organizations are a special category of corporation that exist to benefit the public, to serve the public good. And in exchange for that, if they operate to benefit the public good, they don't have to pay income taxes. Nonprofits are governed by a board of directors, and that board of directors needs to be people who are from the community, who care about the organization, who most frequently don't work for the organization. And they are responsible for making sure that the organization is a strong and stable organization. Now, of course, as everybody knows, the backbone of any organization is their staff. And to the extent that a board can help create a strong and stable staff structure and support the growth and development of the organization, you're going to have a good organization. Sean has been our executive director for many, many, many years, and he's served us really well. And he's decided that it's time to move on. So in place of Sean McLaughlin, we've hired Christina Marie Jeffers, who actually comes from public access in Sacramento. So she has a background in doing the kind of work that we do in a different area. She also has a really strong background in media and production and fund development. So we're really excited to have her coming on board. She's going to be coming on board the latter part of October, and we think she's going to bring a lot to our table. And we as a board intend to do what we try to do best, which is to support having a strong, stable staff. And I'm pleased to say most of the people who work for Access Humboldt have been here for a long, long time, and they really know what they're doing.
Yes, I concur with that. And we'll just briefly say that the staff folks were kept apprised of the candidates, and they ranked the possible people we were going to hire. And Christina was by far their first choice as well. So I think you'll find there's great rejoicing among the staff as well of what's coming up.
And Jay was actually on the hiring committee, so he may want to contribute to this as well.
That's right. That's right.
So let's get to that process. because it's a curious thing. Like, what does it take to hire something for a long-standing company, for a long-standing nonprofit? What does it take to find the right person, of all the people in the world, to fill that position? So we will get back to that right after this quick break. You're listening to Thursday Night Talk. Welcome back to Thursday Night Talk. I'm your local host, Talvi Freed. I am here with Access Humboldt board members, Board Chair Molly Kate, Jay Tillman, and Jane Callahan, who all have massive credentials under their names. You may see them in other episodes of Thursday Night Talk. I'm pretty sure all of you have been, at least once, I think. I believe so. I think so. If not, you're very likely to be on another show, because Access Humboldt is not the one and only thing that everyone does with their lives. So we were discussing the changes of Access Humboldt and kind of the process that a nonprofit goes through when a high position comes up, and the hiring process for that, which we say adieu to Sean McLaughlin, who is still going to be around. He's not leaving forever. And we say hello to Christina Marie Jeffers. How did it go from one to the other? Because it took months. This wasn't like an overnight, let's just see an application, oh, you're hired the next day sort of thing. It actually takes quite a bit. So Jay, I know you were on the hiring committee.
Was. Yeah, it's an interesting process. This is the first time that I had ever been a part of the hiring process. You know, I've been hired for many jobs, but never on the other side of the table. So it was really interesting to see. I also work for the Ink People, so I went through as a staff member the process of hiring our new executive director after Libby Maynard, the original founder, and Brenda Texford, who started the Ink People, and was then Leslie Castellano, of course, now is our new executive director. So I've been through the process as a staff member and the changes that brings on, but this is the first time actually experiencing, like, sitting at the table and going through all the interview questions and just hearing what people had to say and sitting through all the Zoom calls. So it was a really interesting process. And we had some really awesome folks helping us, like, organize everything and kind of really streamline the process. And just, like, you know, I think it would have been a lot different without some help from, I believe, if I remember my history correctly, the folks that originally hired Sean and found Sean for this position as well. Is it the Buskey Group? Is that correct? I think
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really interesting, like, working with them and you know, seeing how, like, they had a lot of experience hiring for other Access community centers. So they had all these questions that were very much related to Access media and the whole, you know, the whole world of what it takes to actually run an organization like this. So yeah, it was quite the experience, and definitely learned a lot from it, from my own perspective. And I'm excited to see where the organization goes, this new chapter, because I've been around the program for a long time in a lot of different capacities. And so I'm excited to see what happens next.
You've seen it from many sides in different organizations, Jay. Thank you for that. The Buskey Group was wonderful. I mean, it's kind of like a plug for them to say, anybody out there doing any nonprofit hiring, get a hold of these folks. They are phenomenal, and they did a great job. And it's quite right. They were still doing their job way back when Sean was originally hired to come over from Hawaii to do the startup here for Access Humboldt, and they're still incredibly good at what they do. Wouldn't you say, Jay?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it made it a lot easier. I couldn't imagine if like trying to come up with all those questions and go through all the, the paperwork and organize everything as well as they did. So
They did several tiers of they've get the word out nationally. That's something they can do. They know how to get the word out nationally, and they came up with a set of candidates that was brought down to the sort of finalist group, and then at each of those stages, as Jay was saying, these folks were um, they were interviewed with this sort of battery of questions, as well as, of course, the normal paperwork you turn in when you're applying for a job. And all people who were involved in each of those interviews ranked the folks going along, which eventually came down to 3, then 2 finalists, and it was unanimous at all levels. Excuse me, my voice is really bad tonight. All of the staff that I'm aware of, and definitely the members of the board also, were on the same page with the folks who were mostly board members, as Jay is here talking about being a part of that actual interview team. And everyone was in complete agreement that Christina was the number one person. And then came the next phase, which Jane was thankfully in charge of, and that was the negotiation with her. And that's the piece that I think was about 10 days, and it felt like about 10 years. Do you want to talk about that part of it, Jane?
Well, it's a really big transition for somebody to pull up stakes in Sacramento and move to Humboldt County, a place that they've never lived before, and do that in such a way that they feel like they have made a good decision and they're going to have a secure job and working environment. And what we are able to offer is a pretty small, we're a pretty small nonprofit organization compared to Sacramento. So we were able to have really nice conversations and get to yes. And I think both of us really feel comfortable about the place that we're at. And we really want to welcome Christina to our community. For anybody who's moved to Humboldt County and hasn't lived here before, it can be a big transition and a big change. And I think what we don't have in terms of resources and maybe large amount of funding, we do have in terms of community involvement, community stakeholder involvement, people who are ready to roll up their sleeves and help. And so I think it's going to be a really good match. And we as a board in particular are ready, willing, and able to support Christina to have a good, smooth transition and set herself up in such a way that she's got the right kind of support to be successful.
So I know that there is, maybe there's somebody out there listening at all, which, by the way, the phone number to call in for any comments, or not to call in, but to send a text message, 707-498-4146. If you want to make any commentary on this show while we're on air, 498-4146. I know that there's somebody out there that if they heard that, they'd go, why didn't you hire a local? And it's the question of the ages, because I know why that it's not always possible to hire somebody local. Though what would you say to the person that would be raging on social media sites, being like, how dare you? There's so many qualified people here in Humboldt.
Well, of course, we had to work.
Can I take a shot at that one?
Yes.
Oh, please.
I've moved to this community in 1970s from outside of the state. I wasn't a local. I became a local. I started a nonprofit organization. I moved away. I lived in Sacramento. I worked in Washington, D.C. I came back, and I really am familiar with that sentiment. But at the end of the day, the most important thing that you can do is hire the person who you feel is best qualified to fill the position, be they local or non-local. And that doesn't mean we don't have incredible talent here in Humboldt County, but it's really important that you find the best fit for your organization, irrespective of where they're currently living.
Yes, amen to that. Yep. It was wide open, absolutely was. And partly it depends on who's going to apply for the job and what they think Access Humboldt most needs. And their decision to apply was presumably based upon those ideas of what they think is the best for Access Humboldt. It was a wonderful thing to read the top candidates' versions of what they think Access Humboldt is best suited to is creating its future. And for us, it was clear that the direction that Christina's bringing was more in alignment with exactly what the board's been wanting to go toward. A person with development skills in an organization and marketing skills, and someone who can work with the extraordinary work that Jane already does in terms of grant writing. She has those skills. So again, going back to the idea of this PEG, that we're there to support P for public, E for education, and G for government access. And that coming through, the funds coming through the PEG fees that the cable companies pay, people are maybe aware of the fact that less and less money is being generated by cable because more and more people are finding their access through the internet. And so our original source of income, set up the way it was back more than a quarter of a century ago, is slowly drying up, and we need to think more in more a global fashion about how we can sustain ourselves as an organization. And that is one of the reasons why this person within the incredible directorship she's had at Access Sacramento in development and marketing was so compelling to us. Absolutely.
Which there was a listener question came in, and they asked, is Access Humboldt funded by the taxpayers? Which you sort of covered, though it's majority PEG fees and fundraising. Does anybody want to get into the, I know who would be great for finances, but they're in Norway right now. So
Yes.
So would anyone like to take a crack at the financial aspect of Access Humboldt and how money comes in?
Go, Jane.
Okay, so the reason why communities have access channels and stations is because when the cable, the original Cable Television Act was devised, what seems like centuries ago,
74.
people lobbied to make sure that a portion of the cable fees, a little itty bitty tiny portion of the cable fees, if you have cable, you'll see it on your bill. It's called PEG, P-E-G. And in Humboldt County, about each person who subscribes to cable pays about under $2 a month to contribute to the cable access stations. That forms the basis of the funding that comes to Access Humboldt. Now, as everybody knows, cable fees are declining. People are no longer on cable. So Access Humboldt has been faced with diversifying our funding base, where today we still get cable fees, we get grants, we get gifts, we get bequests, we get memberships, and we do fee-for-service work where maybe organizations might hire us to do a production for them. In addition to that, a small portion of our revenue comes from local jurisdictions who hire Access Humboldt to basically broadcast their meetings. So that's a pretty good encapsulation of where our funding comes from. Of course, taxpayers are always free to make donations and contributions, but there's no line item budget per se in any local government entity that just gives Access Humboldt money to be Access Humboldt.
What a great time to shout out that, support for programming on KZZH and Access Humboldt can be from listeners like you. So please, if you want to sponsor this wonderful nonprofit or show you're listening to or anything specific on the Access Humboldt networks, may as well text message 798-498-4146 or email kzzh@accesshumboldt.net, and we can be mentioning your name on here as a wonderful supporter. not the biggest funding source. Oh, info at accesshumboldt.net. Not the biggest source for funding, oddly enough. Mostly it's been PEG fees, but that's why it's so important to get somebody who's to find an executive director who's aware of what sort of modern world we're dealing with, because the PEG fees are lowering and lowering constantly. There's new legislation coming up about streaming fees, and I'm not sure if anybody wants to get into that. I'm seeing no's across the board. I find it fascinating, but I'm just here to interview everyone. What? Well, and there's the grants essentially. So I guess in a roundabout way, if you work and pay taxes, you probably somehow feed Access Humboldt a little bit, though it's not necessarily through the taxes directly for everybody.
Yeah.
As Jane said, those individual cities pay fees for their meetings to be recorded and, of course, put on those cable channels where you can still see them. A lot of people, the only thing they know about Access Humboldt might be, oh, there's that city council meeting again. I don't know if I want to watch that, but they know it's out there, and so it's someone's actually recording these things, and it creates a public record, and Access Humboldt is a part of that. That's true of the League of Women Voters as well. We often hire Access Humboldt to record events we're doing. This is any organization can in the county. I was last spring part of a little collective group of the Human Rights Commission here and the League of Women Voters. We did a public forum on hate speech, and we asked Access Humboldt and paid Access Humboldt to please record that for us so that it shows up at the Internet Archive. It shows up in places where Access Humboldt can replay it so that folks can find out about things that have happened in the county. Yeah, it's a great thing, but not directly taxpayer money. This is public use payments, if you will.
Yeah, I think the really important message here is we're local. And I think as everybody knows, it's harder and harder to get local news and information. Newspapers aren't owned locally. TV channels aren't owned locally anymore. We do have some wonderful, we're blessed actually to have some wonderful local news outlets. But by and large, communities are losing their local news and information. And when that happens, they become news deserts. And it's never good for a community not to have their own local homegrown people, their neighbors, their friends and neighbors who get out the local news, be it really, really local, like neighborhood news or city news or county news. And Access Humboldt is all about local, as are some of our wonderful other media partners who are also working really, really hard to make sure that local news and information doesn't go away in Humboldt County like it has in many, many places in the United States.
Yeah, there have been articles written showing how vulnerable communities are when they lose local media sources. They can be flim-flammed by all kinds of things that happen by the governmental entities that have no oversight any longer, and or not as much oversight as they once had. Nothing immediate that would show up in a news presentation. That it creates a great vulnerability in a community, and that's one of the reasons that it's so great that we're here as these wonderful, as Jane said, we are very, very fortunate in Humboldt County to have a number of news organizations that are still very much local, that we all work hand in hand to make sure that the county is well served in finding out what's going on in their own name. And that's what we try to do too.
It's one of those trade-offs that we have so many local transparent news groups, and luckily we have Access Humboldt, kind of, I mean, I'd say some is biased, some is unbiased. Access Humboldt does not, it's all content creator created. So if you're local, you can create what you'd like. It doesn't just have to be a news story, though there is a lot of push on local voices and local stories and the transparency. And that's when they say small town community, we all know everything about everybody, but that also holds everybody accountable because you can't get one upped by somebody with what I would call a an idea of what my life should be that I would think is negative. They can't do that to me because I know what's up with their politics, essentially. Which leads me to ask a question that I will get to right after the break, and that is Access Humboldt political? And we'll get to that in just a few moments. You're listening to Thursday Night Talk. Welcome back to Thursday Night Talk. I am your local host, Talvi Freed. I'm here with Molly Kate, Jay Tillman, and Jane Callahan, board members of Access Humboldt, and we are discussing Access Humboldt, a little bit of the history covered there, what Access Humboldt is, where the funding comes from, what's going to be up with the new executive director, and how we found a new executive director. I mean, truly, what's going to be up is I'm looking forward to seeing the transformations that are going to be happening because, I mean, I love Access Humboldt. It's and change can be good. Change can be very good. The world is changing, and you got to keep up with it. So I'm interested in that. And then we talked about what the importance of small local media outlets is. I do consider Access Humboldt a news source, though it's not only a news source. And I've heard from many that they consider it political because everyone has to politicize everything, no matter what the topic is. And I'm like, can I just like a baby hippo? No. Apparently there's an agenda with that, and there's no agenda with me loving the baby hippo whose name I can't even remember. Like Mugu, I don't know. It's so cute. I just want it to like eat it. I don't know if hippos eat carrots. Though that's the fun of having a show on Access Humboldt. I can go on a diatribe about how cute a hippo is, and it's my show. And then it'll be played on all the channels, or well, channel 12 specifically, I think. Though is Access Humboldt political, internally, externally? What are the political rules here? Because I have heard that, it's such a left-wing outlet, and it is a news format, but I wouldn't consider it a news station. So I'm curious what the board members think of this.
I wonder if Jay could talk a little bit about how just the average person, irrespective of the walk of life they come from, can get involved in media and Access Humboldt and doing their own productions, irrespective of what their backgrounds are. Jay, can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, it's really interesting because I would say no, it's not political. It's like anybody, like I could go on there and submit anything to Access Humboldt. In the, when we're talking about broadcasting the city council meetings and things, it's just the recording of it. Like there's no, there's no input from Access Humboldt. It's just capturing whatever's happening. Same with when you submit content. Really, there's no filter process. Like we don't look at anything that people submit. It goes up and we just expect that, okay, these are the rules. If you're running for office, you can produce a program and put it on, submit it to Access Humboldt. Of course, there's no the big thing is no paid advertising, right? So even commercial content, like you can't be selling something. But basically, you submit stuff to Access Humboldt, we put it on the air, and really that's, there's the restrictions are your own like your own initiative to go and do, go and fill out the paperwork. So in that sense, the platform is what the community makes it. So whoever utilizes it, that's their platform, and that's how it, that's the whole idea of public access. It's for everybody, and if you if you use it more than someone else, then that's the other person's, they can do the same. So basically, that's that's a simplified version of the whole thing.
Hey, great, Jay, thank you. And I also would say he's been a little too modest. There's a lot of what Jay's involved in is helping people learn how to do that part of getting themselves out there. And that is something that's the media center part. And that is what there's a bunch of folks who are very thrilled to help anyone in the county produce something that they want to have the general public know about. And I would agree with Jay. No, it's not political. Individually, we have our own political beliefs, but that has nothing to do with the organization as a whole. And we're out there to put out everything that we can. And since a lot of what we do is through the internet now, and there really aren't any rules, and even the 7 words you can't say on the radio, that doesn't even fly on the internet. So we actually work in different kinds of rules that are set out by others, the FCC, for example, in different settings. There are different rules for the radio station, there are different rules for the cable TV stations, and there are different rules for things that are put on the internet. And we're just wanting to put everything out there without curating it, moderating it, or editing anything that people have to say, with the exception of what meets the FCC regulations. That's it. We're a public service.
I felt like that question was kind of important because,
Yeah,
especially if it involves, there's money coming from somewhere, and people asking the taxpayer question, which no, in a roundabout way, sort of, but also in a roundabout way, no. Uh, Public use funds. So there's with the elections coming up, there's this question every year of, Access Humboldt's biased because no, I just one, I do ask all sides. Before elections, you can't actually. I pretty much just stay away from it. After elections, whoever's elected can come on the show and be like, "I'm an elected official," and that's cool. So there's so many interesting rules about that. Where let's talk about content submission real quick because there's a lot of people out there that do have. So I guess this would be mostly aimed towards Jay, there or anyone. There's a lot of people out there who have files and things like that. I had a friend submit, or I mean, she submitted. I didn't have her do it. She did it of her own volition because she was excited about the content she was creating, which is all this beautiful marsh photography, and she calls it marsh moments, and it's this beautiful piece, and it's just nature and the wildlife of the marsh, and that is a very non-political thing. Though if a politician decided that they wanted to create a show and say, I am this person, and leave out the politics of it, they can create a show and be like, I'm going to dress, as Santa Claus and, dance the hula. They can do what they want as long as they don't say the words like, go vote for me, because then that opens us up to some weird thing where we have to, if any one side has the ability to be on Access Humboldt, the other opponent, or however you want to call it, has to have the same opportunities. Hence why during the political season, you'll notice a lot of creators just step away. Equal time applies only to the radio, I guess.
You're kind of connecting to something that we notice where only certain people, perhaps in a race, will create content, for putting on the air. That's on up to them. We will air everybody's, but not everyone produces it. So that's up to them to produce that, and we'll get it on the air if they do.
So I would like to add just a little important caveat. The rules are different for radio than they are for cable access.
Yes.
So what you're used to with radio, which is equal access, and if you give one candidate a form, you have to give the other candidate a form. I believe that's true for radio. However, with public access television, the rules are slightly different, and anybody, whether or not they're running for public office, whether or not they hold public office, they can use the resources of Access Humboldt to bring their message forward. And what we like to see as an organization is we like to see a multiplicity of political backgrounds and beliefs. And anyone, whether or not they're a candidate or already elected, can take advantage of the cable access portion of Access Humboldt to get their message out.
Perhaps this would be a good spot for me to throw in something from one of our board members who could not be here tonight. And I had asked in particular Patty Hecht, who is a member of HAPI, Humboldt Asian Pacific Islanders in Solidarity, and Brenda Perez from Centro del Pueblo, if they would be a part of this. They were not able to do so. And then I asked them if they could put together something that I could read on the air. And Brenda was out of town, I think, but I did get something from Patty. So I'd like a moment just to read it to you, if I may. Humboldt Asians and Pacific Islanders in Solidarity, otherwise known as HAPI, had its third annual Obon Festival here in Humboldt in August. This time the festival was video and audio documented by Jack Liu and Mason Alway, two Arcata High students, with the professional input of Access Humboldt's talented and way experienced producer, Nate Dogg. The hope is for the raw source recordings to be used to make a couple of promos for future HAPI Obon festivals and an Obon Humboldt documentary. HAPI's organizational access membership came with 5 individual memberships, 2 of which were applied to allow Jack and Mason the option to train on and use Access Humboldt's equipment. We are fortunate to have the many benefits of enthusiastic and creatively minded Nate as a guide, thought provoker, and assistant to the students with this unique project. Imagine an Obon festival in a town that doesn't have a Buddhist temple. And we are really happy to offer these budding videographers growth opportunities and exposure to different modalities of communication, presentation, and expressive art. Now, that's one of the reasons why it's so valuable for us to have members of the board and others who are very active in Humboldt, Access Humboldt, who are members of different, less well-heard groups, such as Centro del Pueblo and HAPI, though they're doing pretty well in getting their word out there. But we want to support all the organizations and the groups out there who are representing the less well-served members of our community. So that's more in the future to keep going and more of that. But I just wanted to share what Patty had to say. I think it was a wonderful comment she made. So thanks for letting me read that.
Thanks to Patty for sending a word. Always adore hearing from her. So wise and wonderful and very, very sweet. Yes, all of that.
A way she could be here tonight a little bit.
So we're going to get into the round robin. Everyone has a few minutes. I'm going to start with Jay, just because I also want you to talk a little bit about a little more about the content, and just because I want to reassure people that yes, you can create content. Yes, you can submit it. Don't judge yourself. Do all that that you're good at, Jay.
Sure.
Also, you have just a minute or so to kind of tell anybody listening to the program on KZZH or on any of the Access Humboldt stations or online, just whatever is on your mind. So you've got a few minutes. Go ahead.
I would say the short form, if you're interested to learn more about these policies that Access Humboldt has around submitting content, there's, of course, our on our website, it's very easy to find. Up on the very top, you can do create and content submission, and there's an amazing document that outlines, right at the top, that outlines the full policy, and you can look over like how we curate, I mean, how we pretty much don't curate things, and what's expected of you as the content creator, the rules to follow, and there's really it's not much. So, but it does outline in detail exactly what type of things to look out for, because there's some rules that just that are for, like we talked about, for TV versus for radio, and you can kind of see the differences there. So I recommend checking that out if you're interested in learning more about it. And you can also submit content while you're on the site. You might as well. You're right there on the same page. As far as my stuff goes, I guess, I think about like my history with Access Humboldt, and like growing up in Eureka and going to Eureka High and being connected with Access Humboldt and all the things, wanting to do video production. And the story from Patty was really cool, because that would have been me. I would have been right there doing the same thing when I was in high school. I always wanted to be around the cameras and equipment and stuff. And, Access Humboldt gave me that opportunity to do those things. And same with, like, if it had been at CR when I was going to CR, I probably would have been in the studio all day long if I could have. So now I'm lucky enough to be able to teach this stuff and kind of have my own small little studio here at the Ink People, our Mars project, where we can, youth can come in and learn all about this stuff, and also go over to Access Humboldt and check it out. Maybe we'll do a field trip and set up some training and rent out equipment and whatnot. So yeah, it's always been, I've learned a lot from Access Humboldt and the people that have that I've interacted with over the years there, and so lots of good stuff happening. So.
Awesome! Thank you so much for joining us, Jay.
Of course.
I'm gonna hop over to Jade. You've got about a minute and a half.
Well, you've got me sort of feeling poetic and a little teary about Access Humboldt. I love this organization. It's so important for a community to have a community media center and make available to anybody in the community the opportunity to do productions, do news, do podcasts, bring their perspective, and share it with their friends and neighbors. I've been involved with Access Humboldt, since I think 2017 now, and I've seen it grow and develop it as an organization. And although we're in the background and we don't talk a lot about how cool Access Humboldt is, I believe the organization is really responsible for helping make this a stronger, better, and more democratic community.
Well, thank you, Jade. Keeping it short and sweet. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Molly, you've got about 2 minutes then.
Well, there is a whole lot more than 2 minutes worth of anyone could say about Access Humboldt. And I particularly appreciate what Jay was just saying, because it's a kind of come on down if you want to know how to do this stuff. If you are just one of those people like Jay was as a younger person that wanted always to be around the equipment, come on and come and see it. Come take a tour. Come learn what you can do there. There's a relatively new podcast studio that was recently dedicated to Libby Maynard, who was a long-term board president, and she's going to have this. Our understanding of who she is shaped in a way by seeing her name on the door, if you will, of this new podcast studio. So there's that. There's always new equipment coming in, and there's a lot going on there that anyone can learn if they are interested in any shape or form of media communications. Access Humboldt is your way in. I first was introduced to Access Humboldt when I moved here in 2014. The very first anything I did out in the public sphere at all was, of course, this is back in the Eureka High days. I went to a presentation there showing a film a local filmmaker made who had been trained at Access Humboldt. So this is ongoing. It expands. It's the ripples in the pond. We're creating all this good stuff, and we want to make sure that it meets the needs of as many different groups and individuals in the community. So do involve yourself in any way, shape, or form. This is a really good organization. I agree. And I also wanted to mention that I think Brenda Perez has a radio show on KZVH, does she not?
She absolutely does.
There you go. There's another connection.
So, there's a million connections all around the community with Access Humboldt. The roots go very, very deep here. So, if you would like to be a supporter of this show, just like our others, you are welcome to. We also have a Patreon. That's about all the time we have today. Thank you to our panel. Molly, Kate, Jay Tillman, Jane Callahan, Access Humboldt board members, fabulous. If you have topics or suggestions for the show, please email us at kzh@accesshumboldt.net. Reminder, the show replays Friday evenings at 8 p.m. right here on KZH 96.7. You can also watch a show on Access Humboldt's YouTube channel. Just look up Access Humboldt. Hours and hours of Thursday night talk, my face, other neighbors' faces. You can love us, you can hate us, just watch. I don't care as long as you like us, like the show.
Come on down to our annual meeting on October 30th at 5 o'clock.
It's October 30th, 5
We'll get to know you and we'll show you all around.
And there'll be snacks. Definitely worth it just for the snacks. And you can see the podcast studio. That's pretty cool too. I will see you next week.